Imagine a world where your words carry immense power, where every syllable you utter shapes the course of your life. Now, picture a realm where silence holds even greater strength. Welcome to the ancient wisdom of Stoicism, where the art of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent can transform your existence. In our fast-paced, noise-filled world, we often underestimate the profound impact of strategic silence. Today, we embark on a journey to uncover 11 powerful moments when embracing silence can lead to personal growth, inner peace, and ultimate success. Stoicism, a philosophy born in ancient Greece, offers timeless guidance on navigating life's complexities with grace and wisdom. At its core lies the belief that by mastering our reactions to external events, we can achieve true freedom and happiness. One of the most potent tools in the Stoic arsenal is the strategic use of silence. As Epictetus wisely stated, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This simple yet profound observation sets the stage for our exploration of silence as a catalyst for personal transformation. Throughout history, great leaders and thinkers have harnessed the power of silence to overcome adversity, inspire change, and cultivate inner strength. From Marcus Aurelius to Mahatma Gandhi, the practice of mindful silence has shaped the course of human events. Today, we delve into 11 critical moments when choosing silence can be your greatest ally. These lessons will not only enhance your personal relationships, but also elevate your professional life and deepen your self-understanding. As we journey through these 11 powerful lessons, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences. How might your life change if you embraced silence in these key moments? What untapped potential lies within the quiet spaces between your words? Are you ready to harness the transformative power of Stoic silence? Let's begin our exploration of this ancient wisdom and its modern applications. Lesson number 1. The power of silence in the face of criticism. Imagine you've just presented a groundbreaking idea at work. As you finish speaking, a colleague launches into a scathing critique, picking apart every aspect of your proposal. Your heart races, and you feel an overwhelming urge to defend yourself. But what if, in this moment, you chose silence instead? Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, once wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control." In the face of criticism, our instinct is often to react immediately, to justify ourselves or counterattack. However, by embracing silence, we give ourselves a powerful gift, the gift of perspective. When we remain silent in the face of criticism, we create space for reflection. We allow ourselves to consider, is there truth in this critique? Is this an opportunity for growth? By resisting the urge to respond defensively, we demonstrate confidence in our ideas and our ability to consider feedback objectively. Consider the story of Steve Jobs, who faced harsh criticism when he introduced the first iPhone. Rather than engaging in heated debates with skeptics, Jobs often responded with thoughtful silence, letting the product speak for itself. This strategic silence allowed him to refine his vision and ultimately revolutionize the smartphone industry. Embracing silence in the face of criticism doesn't mean accepting every negative comment as truth. Instead, it means giving yourself the time and space to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. It's about choosing wisdom over impulsiveness and growth over ego protection. The next time you face criticism, challenge yourself to pause before responding. Take a deep breath and allow silence to be your first response. You may find that in that quiet moment, you gain invaluable insights about yourself, your critic, and the situation at hand. Lesson number 2, harnessing silence during conflict resolution. Picture a heated argument with a loved one. Emotions are running high, voices are raised, and hurtful words are flying back and forth. In this storm of conflict, silence can be your anchor, a powerful tool for de-escalation and understanding. Epictetus wisely advised, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This principle is never more crucial than in the midst of conflict. By choosing silence, we create space for active listening, allowing us to truly hear and understand the other person's perspective. When we embrace silence during conflict, we interrupt the cycle of reactivity. Instead of immediately countering each point, we give ourselves time to process information and respond thoughtfully. This pause can be transformative, often leading to more productive and compassionate resolutions. Consider the example of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison yet emerged as a beacon of reconciliation. Mandela's ability to listen silently to those who had oppressed him was key to his success in uniting a divided nation. His strategic use of silence disarmed his opponents and created opportunities for dialogue. Practicing silence in conflict doesn't mean becoming a doormat or suppressing your own needs. Rather, it's about creating a space where both parties can be heard and understood. It's an act of strength, not weakness. The next time you find yourself in a heated disagreement, challenge yourself to embrace a moment of silence. Use this pause to truly listen, to consider the other person's point of view, and to formulate a response that moves the conversation towards resolution rather than further conflict. Remember, in the silence between words, we often find the path to understanding and reconciliation. Lesson number 3. The strength of silence in the face of provocation. Imagine you're in a situation where someone is deliberately trying to provoke you, pushing your buttons with insults or unfair accusations. Your blood begins to boil, and you feel an overwhelming urge to retaliate. But what if, in this moment of provocation, you chose the path of silence? The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." This wisdom is particularly relevant when facing provocation. By choosing silence, we deny the provocateur the reaction they seek, effectively disarming them. When we respond to provocation with silence, we maintain our composure and dignity. We demonstrate a level of self-control that often commands more respect than any verbal comeback could. This silence is not passive, it's a powerful, active choice. Embracing silence in these moments doesn't mean you're weak or allowing yourself to be walked over. On the contrary, it shows immense strength and self-assurance. You're choosing not to let someone else's words or actions dictate your behavior. The next time you find yourself provoked, challenge yourself to pause before responding. Take a deep breath and consider, is engaging with this provocation aligned with my values and goals? Often, you'll find that silence is the most powerful response you can give. Remember, your silence in the face of provocation is not just about the immediate situation. It's about cultivating a mindset of equanimity and self-control that will serve you in all areas of life. Lesson number 4. The wisdom of silence in decision-making. Picture yourself at a crossroads, faced with a significant life decision. Everyone around you has an opinion, and the noise of their advice is deafening. In this crucial moment, the power of silence can be your greatest ally. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." This inner wisdom, accessible through silence, is often drowned out by the cacophony of external voices and our own racing thoughts. When we embrace silence in decision-making, we create space for deep reflection. We allow ourselves to connect with our inner voice, our true values, and our long-term vision. This thoughtful pause can lead to decisions that are more aligned with our authentic selves. Consider the example of Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful investors. Buffett is known for his quiet room, a place where he spends hours in silence, thinking and making decisions. This practice of silent reflection has been key to his ability to make wise, long-term investment choices amidst market noise and short-term pressures. Embracing silence in decision-making doesn't mean ignoring valuable input or avoiding necessary research. Rather, it's about creating a space where you can process information deeply and connect with your own intuition and values. The next time you face a significant decision, challenge yourself to carve out time for silent reflection. Step away from the noise of opinions and distractions. Sit quietly with your thoughts, allowing your mind to settle and your inner wisdom to emerge. Remember, in the silence of reflection, we often find clarity and direction that eludes us in the noise of everyday life. Lesson number 5. Silence as a tool for self-discovery. Imagine stepping away from the constant chatter of daily life, the endless notifications, and the incessant internal dialogue. In this space of silence, you have the opportunity to embark on a profound journey of self-discovery. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." This wisdom reminds us that true self-discovery often requires us to let go of our preconceptions and the need for external validation. Silence provides the perfect environment for this inner exploration. When we embrace silence for self-discovery, we create space to observe our thoughts, feelings, and reactions without judgment. We allow ourselves to dive beneath the surface of our habitual patterns and connect with our deeper truths. Consider the practice of Vipassana meditation, a technique that involves extended periods of silence. Many practitioners report profound insights and personal transformations through this practice. By sitting in silence, they gain a clearer understanding of their minds and their place in the world. Embracing silence for self-discovery doesn't mean you need to embark on a silent retreat. Although that can be powerful, it can be as simple as setting aside time each day for quiet reflection, journaling, or mindful walks in nature. The next time you feel disconnected from yourself or unsure of your path, challenge yourself to embrace a period of intentional silence. Use this time to ask yourself deep questions, to listen to your inner voice, and to explore your true desires and values. Remember, in the silence of self-reflection, we often uncover truths about ourselves that can guide us towards more authentic and fulfilling lives. Lesson number 6. The art of silence in leadership. Picture a leader who commands respect not through loud proclamations, but through the power of their silent presence. This leader understands that sometimes the most impactful thing they can do is to create space for others to speak and be heard. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, observed, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we say." This principle is particularly crucial in leadership, where the ability to listen and observe can be far more valuable than the ability to speak. When leaders embrace silence, they demonstrate confidence and self-assurance. They show that they value the input of others and are secure enough in their position to not dominate every conversation. This silence can foster creativity, encourage diverse perspectives, and build trust within teams. Consider the leadership style of Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. Nadella is known for his thoughtful, listening-centric approach. He often remains silent in meetings, creating space for others to share ideas and fostering a culture of innovation. This approach has been credited with revitalizing Microsoft's corporate culture and driving the company's resurgence. Embracing silence in leadership doesn't mean being passive or uninvolved. Instead, it's about knowing when to step back, when to create space for others, and when your silence can speak louder than words. The next time you're in a leadership position, challenge yourself to embrace strategic silence. practice active listening, create pauses for reflection in meetings, and resist the urge to fill every silence with your own voice. Remember, in the silence of thoughtful leadership, we often cultivate the most engaged, innovative, and collaborative teams. Lesson number 7, silence as a response to gossip and rumors. Imagine you've just overheard colleagues spreading rumors about you or engaging in harmful gossip. Your instinct might be to jump in, to defend yourself or set the record straight. But what if, instead, you chose the path of silence? The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely noted, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" This humorous response highlights a profound truth. Often, the most powerful way to deal with gossip is not to engage with it at all. When we respond to gossip or rumors with silence, we refuse to give them power or credibility. We demonstrate a level of self-assurance that is far more convincing than any verbal defense. This silence is not about ignoring the issue, but about choosing a more dignified and effective response. Embracing silence in the face of gossip doesn't mean you're allowing false narratives to persist. Instead, it's about choosing to let your actions and character speak for themselves. It's a recognition that engaging with gossip often only serves to amplify it. The next time you find yourself the subject of rumors or gossip, challenge yourself to pause before responding. Consider whether your engagement would truly improve the situation, or if your silence might be the most powerful statement you can make. Remember, in the silence of non-engagement, we often find the most effective way to maintain our dignity and focus on what truly matters. Lesson number 8. The power of silence in negotiation. Picture yourself in a high-stakes negotiation. The tension is palpable, and every word seems to carry immense weight. In this pressure cooker environment, the strategic use of silence can be your secret weapon. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." This wisdom is particularly relevant in negotiations, where knowing when not to speak can be just as important as knowing what to say. When we embrace silence in negotiations, we create space for the other party to reveal more information, to reconsider their position, or to make concessions. Silence can make others uncomfortable, often prompting them to fill the void with additional offers or revelations. Consider the negotiation tactics of Chris Voss, a former FBI hostage negotiator. Voss often speaks about the power of strategic silence in negotiations. He notes that a carefully placed pause can cause the other party to second-guess themselves and often leads to better outcomes than continuous talking. Embracing silence in negotiations doesn't mean being passive or unengaged. It's about being strategic, about knowing when to speak, and when letting silence do the work will be more effective. The next time you find yourself in a negotiation, challenge yourself to embrace moments of strategic silence. Resist the urge to fill every pause with words. Instead, use these silent moments to observe, to think, and to allow the other party to feel the weight of their own words. Remember, in the silence of skilled negotiation, we often find the path to mutually beneficial outcomes. Lesson number 9. Silence as a tool for emotional regulation. Imagine you're in a situation that's triggering intense emotions, anger, fear, or frustration. Your heart is racing, your thoughts are spinning, and you feel an overwhelming urge to react. In this charged moment, silence can be your most powerful ally. Marcus Aurelius advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This Stoic wisdom reminds us that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can control our response. Silence gives us the space to choose that response wisely. When we embrace silence in emotionally charged situations, we give ourselves time to process our feelings, to let the initial surge of emotion pass, and to respond from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity. This pause can be the difference between a regrettable outburst and a measured, effective response. Consider the practice of the sacred pause in mindfulness traditions. This involves taking a conscious moment of silence before responding to any emotionally triggering situation. Many practitioners report that this simple practice has transformed their relationships and their ability to handle stress. Embracing silence for emotional regulation doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or avoiding difficult conversations. Instead, it's about creating a space between stimulus and response, a space in which you can choose how to express your emotions effectively. The next time you find yourself in an emotionally charged situation, challenge yourself to take a moment of silence before responding. Use this pause to take a deep breath, to check in with yourself, and to choose your response consciously. Remember, in the silence of emotional self-regulation, we often find the strength to respond to life's challenges with wisdom and grace. Lesson number 10, the wisdom of silence in learning and growth. Picture yourself as a student, not just in a classroom, but in the grand school of life. In this ongoing journey of learning and growth, silence can be your most effective teacher. By embracing silence, we open ourselves to new ideas, perspectives, and insights that might otherwise be drowned out by our own thoughts and words. When we approach learning with silence, we cultivate humility and receptivity. We acknowledge that there is always more to learn, and we create space for that knowledge to enter. This silence is not passive, it's an active, engaged listening that fuels our growth. Consider the Socratic method of teaching, where questions and silence play a crucial role in fostering critical thinking and deep understanding. By creating space for reflection and self-discovery, this method has been a cornerstone of education for centuries. Embracing silence in learning doesn't mean never asking questions or expressing ideas. Rather, it's about finding a balance, knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to assert and when to absorb. The next time you find yourself in a learning situation, whether it's a formal class, a conversation with a mentor, or simply reading a book, challenge yourself to embrace periods of reflective silence. Use these moments to deeply process what you're learning, to make connections, and to generate your own insights. Remember, in the silence of true learning, we often discover our greatest potential for growth and transformation. Lesson number 11, silence as a path to inner peace. Imagine a world where the constant chatter of thoughts, worries, and external noise fades away, leaving you with a profound sense of calm and clarity. This is the promise of silence as a path to inner peace. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." This state of presence and contentment is often most accessible to us in moments of silence. When we embrace silence as a regular practice, we create space for inner stillness to emerge. This silence allows us to detach from the constant stream of thoughts and worries that often cloud our minds, revealing a deeper sense of peace that lies beneath. Consider the growing popularity of silent retreats and meditation practices. Many participants report experiencing profound shifts in their sense of well-being and perspective on life through extended periods of silence. These practices demonstrate the transformative power of stepping away from the noise of daily life. Embracing silence for inner peace doesn't require you to take a vow of silence or retreat from the world. It can be as simple as setting aside a few minutes each day for quiet reflection or taking regular digital detoxes to step away from the constant stimulation of technology. The next time you feel overwhelmed by the noise of life, challenge yourself to create a pocket of silence in your day. Use this time to simply be, without the need to do or achieve anything. Notice the thoughts and feelings that arise, and practice letting them pass without judgment. Remember, in the silence of inner stillness, we often find the peace and clarity that eludes us in the business of everyday life. As we conclude our journey through these 11 powerful lessons in Stoic silence, take a moment to reflect on how you might incorporate these practices into your daily life. Each moment of chosen silence is an opportunity for growth, understanding, and inner peace. The Stoic philosophers understood that true strength often lies not in what we say, but in our ability to remain silent with purpose and wisdom. By mastering the art of strategic silence, we equip ourselves with a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges with grace and dignity. Remember, embracing silence doesn't mean withdrawing from life or suppressing your voice. Instead, it's about choosing your moments of expression wisely, creating space for deeper understanding, and cultivating inner strength and peace. As you move forward, I encourage you to experiment with these lessons in your daily interactions. Notice the impact of chosen silence on your relationships, your decision-making, and your inner world. You may find that in the quiet spaces between words, you discover a wellspring of wisdom, strength, and serenity. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Stoic silence. May these lessons serve you well on your journey towards a more thoughtful, peaceful, and fulfilling life. Until next time, remember the power of silence, and choose your moments of speech and silence with intention and wisdom.